All right, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And we're gonna look at pops again on this one. This is the second part of my pop explorations. And yeah, we have 4 completely random examples that I've been playing with. First one being very close to, or basically a pop revision of my image instancing tutorial. And then we have an audio reactive sketch, an interactive sketch, which actually kind of looks like this. And then we've got this very experimental fractal feedback system that I've been messing around with, which is pretty fun. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it and start with this one. So I will delete all of this. So in all of these examples, I've got a render network, render setup, and usually I just got a geo with a pop input. If you don't have a pop input, just right click on your pop output and then select a geo from here. I always have a camera and in some cases a light. If I use a phone, if we use line material or similar, then we don't need a light. My camera got settings, background color turn on, so alpha 1, and that's pretty much it. And I've already positioned these. So this is just something that you've got to set up. And then I've also got a video device in, which I'm going to bypass for now. And then we got a movie file in. So this is just a random fly through with forests, can be anything. I will begin with a grid pop here. And I want this to be flat on the floor. So first off, I'm going to turn on W so we can see the grid. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees on the x-axis so it's flat on the floor, on the ground. I'm going to change the columns and rows to 100 by 100 each. And I'm going to uniform scale this up by 2. And that's basically all I've got to do for the grid. So next step is Lookup texture, which is something we've used last video as well, and which we're going to use in another example as well. It's actually very powerful pop because it enables us to manipulate attributes or pops generally with a texture, so a top, which is amazing. We're going to come back to that. I'm going to put a box here, and I want this box to be copied on every point of the grid. So first off, to do that, I want the box to be very small. So I'm going to change the uniform scale down to 0.01, and I also want the anchor V to be 0, so they're actually like flat on the ground instead of like in the center there, so they're standing on 0 basically. So I'm gonna add a copy and put that in here, and now you can already see we got a box at every point of the grid. So I can already put that in here, and because of my setup I can see this nicely. That's what we're gonna add some more there, but let's look at the tops now. So for the top, I want to have a fit because we have a square grid here, so I want this to be square too. So I'm just gonna change it, leave it here at 1000 by 1000, it's fine, and change the fit to fit outside. And then I want to have 2 chains from here, so I'm gonna just quickly turn that off. I'm gonna add a null here, which is called color. So I'm going to put it there, and then another chain where I'm going to add a monochrome, a blur, actually level before, right after, I don't think it matters. And then I'm going to add a null here and just call that text. And this text I'm going to drag onto my lookup texture. And here I'm going to select text 0 and text 1. Which are attributes that we actually get in a grid, and I want to change the output attribute scope to scale. And this is just something that I mean you can give this any name, right? We're basically creating that attribute, so now you can see that pop up here. Basically we just need RGB in this case, and that's actually all we've got to do for now. So now what I want to do is I want to actually use this attribute that we created in the copy. So I'm gonna go to my template, turn on scale, and just call it scale. So you can already see that works now. So if I were to turn on the background again, you can see all of them are uniformly scaled now. So on all 3 axes. I actually only want this to manipulate the height, so the Y scale. So I'm gonna go back here and just change my high and low, like the low on to 1 on both X and Z. So these are basically constant now. I want the minimum scale to be like 1 or 2 maybe for the Y, and then the maximum like 40. So now we can see that it actually scales up all of the boxes based on this input. So right now it looks very messy, very pixely. So yeah, one idea is to add color to make this a bit easier to see. So we can use another lookup texture, put that on here, and then we can just use output attribute scope color. You can see now that it doesn't look correct, right? You can see these lines. So actually what we want to do is we want to add a texture map before and change the projection axis to Y. And then we can select text 0 and text 1 here again. And now you can see the texture is correct. So now we have a bit more control here on how this behaves. So first off, if I don't have any blur, it's even more pixelated, and the more blur I add, the more, well, smooth it's gonna get, obviously. So looks more like small hills, right? And this looks more like, I don't know what it looks like. Yeah, with the level, I can also like decrease the gamma, for example, so only like really the highs like go out, or like I can increase the contrast. So I'm just adding this for more input control. And obviously we can add different inputs. So I could add, for example, my little jellyfish, and it's nice to see here. Most of the boxes are flat, and wherever the jellyfish is, it gets like higher. So I can again also use my video device in. So it's super interactive. In this case, actually my background is way brighter than my foreground, so I might want to invert it. So I'm sticking out or something. So you can just see it's nice to have some control for the input as well. And then obviously you can't just use this for scale. You can use this for anything. Attributes can be they're very flexible in a way. So yeah, that's basically it for the first example. It's quite amazing to me how simple this setup is compared to the instancing setup that we had before. Yeah, let's get to the second one. Okay, here I'm gonna turn on the sound quickly so you can actually hear what's going on and how it's reacting to the sound. All right, again, as I said, completely random sketch, but I think it's interesting. So I'm gonna delete all of this stuff. So what I've got here is a component that you can get on my Patreon, which is the link is in the description. You can totally also just use the audio analysis from here. Basically, I'm just using a level and the spectrum. But yeah, I really like this component that I built. It's also got audio analysis on here. Got the power for the level spectrum turned on. Got my file selected, and I got also some useful information here. I can change the output volume and stuff. And then I can just select my channel here. I just want to have level. I actually really like working with just level. It's pretty powerful if you use it consistently throughout your sketch on different parameters. So I'm just going to add a math here. So we're going to go some steps back before we actually get into the pops. Math, speed, and now. And then I'm going to add a resample to this, because what we're getting here is actually spectrum. So if I turn off time slice, we're now resampling this, but actually I want to change this to new rate, new interval. And instead of doing this stuff there, we can just add a pattern here, change the length to 100, and now we have 100 samples in the resample, which is a good value to work with, I think. So this is a nice little trick to change the sample rate there. Then I'm going to add a lag. Lag is such an underappreciated component, like operator. I mean, such a good one. It's actually also being used on the audio analysis in there. So I'm going to do lag per sample, turn off the input lag, and add some overshoot on the out. Just makes a bit, you can see maybe the difference here. It's just smooth this out things. I can't pronounce that. All right, so now and then we want to convert that into tops. So chop to top, and then a resolution. Let's just turn on high quality resize, even though I just really don't know if that makes a difference. Custom resolution, let's go for like 1024 resolution, and then we got that. then what I often do is add a ramp, because the thing is with like audio analysis is that you kind of get the lows are usually more intense than the highs. So that means then that here it's usually brighter than here, as you can kind of see. So with a ramp from left to right, you can kind of like even that out. So you can basically, you can click on the black one, and if you don't want the effect to be as strong, you can just go brighter. I think that's a nice way to make them more even. Again, we might want to add a level to be more in control here. Then I'm gonna just add a null and call that text again, because we kind of want to do a similar thing as we did before. So I'm gonna add a grid. In this case, I just want this to be line strips, and I only want them to be vertical. And then I want a lot of them. So I'm gonna do 150 by 400. And why am I doing 400? So the thing is, if I right click pop points, I want a lot of like points in between the lines, because we want to distort the lines. So if we don't have that, it's gonna look like, it's not gonna look good. You could, how I did in the beginning actually was using a line divide pop, which also works, but this is I think the cleaner way. Just do everything in the grid pop. Again, I want to have a lookup texture, and I also want to have a transform, which actually is already connecting to my geo here. Again, just quickly, I've got a line material with lines turned on in slide alpha. Got my camera placed like that, and I've got some post-processing, which I'm going to bypass right now so we can see better what's going on. And I look at that later. So I just got these lines going down. So to show you what direction we're going into, I'm just gonna add a noise. And I just love this so much. This actually used to be so much more complicated with like SOPs, or now I could even animate this, right? And it's still like super smooth. And this is already fun, right? This is already nice to play around with. So I'm very happy about pops actually. But yeah, we want to kind of create the same, but like with an audio reactive texture. So basically we want to manipulate the transform like we did in the last video. So I want to like change the Z position and maybe some other things, but based on the strength of our texture. So I can again use that here. And now I'm just gonna use like text 0 and text 1, and then I just need R. And then what I can do now is I can create another attribute again. I'm going to call this distort. And you can call this whatever you like. Again, it's going to turn up here. If you middle mouse click, kind of see what type it is as well. And now I can use that on my transform as the weight attribute, distort. And now if I distort it on the Z, you can see like the strength of where it actually gets displaced on the Z axis is based on the strength of our texture, which is based on the strength of the audio. So the whole thing is audio reactive. And again, if I turn off the ramp here, like the lows go out like really strongly, and here it's like more, it's more evened out, I guess. So again, with the level, you're a bit in control. Let's make this texture more interesting. So first I might want to add a noise here. So I could add a noise there, and we're actually going to, but the effect is slightly different if we use it before. So actually this noise I want to be manipulated by our level. So I put that on the Z translate. And then I also want this to actually just be multiplied. It's already better. Period 2, harmonics 4. And harmonic spread 3.5, harmonic gain 0.4. These are just random values as always, and the amplitude might want to go down a bit as well. So it's like a subtle noise, but you can really clearly see the difference for sure. And again, you can make this stronger by increasing the distortion here and the transform. So this is really the crucial one here. Now I also want to add a ramp before the noise actually. It should be a vertical one. And this one I actually want to add it on top. So I might want to reduce the value here a bit. And I also want this to be ease in, ease out, because you can see like it's a really sharp edge. So now if I like move this a bit to the, like if I slightly phase it maybe, you can see it better. So if I were to put it all the way to the right, you can see it's a completely sharp edge. Let me turn this off. Yeah, and now if you put it a bit to the center, it's like more smoothed out, which I kind of like. So now I want to animate this face again, also based on the level. But I'm going to put a minus before because I want it to move from up, like from top to bottom. And of course you can also, you could, for example, I don't know, rotate it or whatever. So it behaves differently. You could scale it down. It's also kind of interesting. Maybe not as strongly. Or you can move it up. I don't know. Whatever you like. Any of these work. And any of these can be interesting. I'm just going to go with what we've got right now. And then, yeah, I might want to add some noise here. Maybe something like that. Maybe just very slightly. And then again, we might want to animate that on the 4D. Let's look at color now. So again, I'm going to use another lookup texture. Nope. Lookup texture. Again, we want to use text 0, text 1. And I'm going to output color. So obviously it's going to show an error now because we don't actually have any input. So let's create that input. I'm going to add a comp here, which isn't entirely necessary, but I'm going to show you a little trick how to make nice color schemes. So you might already know that, but add noise. Add this also into the second input, output just noise. Let's turn on color, but then you can't see color because our pixel format is monochrome. So we want to change that to maybe 16-bit float RGBA. Let's put that in here, change this to difference. And again, this is not a super important step, but just makes it a bit more interesting. And then we might want to change the harmonics, go down a bit, and the offset also to be a bit lower so we have a bit darker colors to work with. And again, we want to maybe animate this based on a level. I kind of like animating everything based on that. Now the kind of trick here is to use a lookup, which is not new, but like, you know, you can, like, this looks very, it's too colorful for me. So with a ramp on top of that, we can now kind of more control which kind of colors we want. So maybe I want to go more to like direction of orange and then maybe like blue here. So you can also see it just looks a bit more washed out. And I think these colors look way better than these. It's just my personal opinion. So let's add it now, call this color, and add it on here. And now we've got these colors here, which I think looks pretty cool. We could maybe even put that on the distort. So like wherever it's distorted stronger, it's gonna have the brighter colors here, and the colors on the right, I guess. So this is also an interesting effect actually. So both totally works. Let's briefly look at the post-processing here. So as I said, I got a line material with lines turned on, points turned off, and slight like alpha here. Obviously blending turned on. And then I've got my little component here, which you can also get on my Patreon, which is like a Luma Blur. So it kind of makes it look more like that. So partly looks a bit more than, like there is things like, it's more dynamic. Some things are in focus, some aren't. But you can totally just do this with the internal Luma Blur and plus a noise. That also works. And then we've got a bloom here. So I really love the bloom because actually not mainly because of the bloom effect, because that's also really cool. So you can, yeah, I can just add a new one and show you. So usually bloom is kind of used to make things glow a bit, right? So you can kind of just go down with this, maybe go up with this. So you can kind of see it glows, which already makes it look much better. I really love this input image parameter. So you can actually go all the way around, like down here, and maybe go down with the min bloom radius, maybe go up with this even more. So basically what this does, instead of actually showing any of the original image or a percentage of that, it shows us the output bloom. So you could just go like bloom completely here. Here you can kind of have a fader. I think that can look really, really cool if you have some contrast in there. So I think, yeah, the AB is like, this looks a lot more interesting. Yeah, so again, if I turn on the music, I've got a nice audio reactive sketch. Actually, let's try this again. Yeah, cool. And again, add anything, go further with this. This is just the beginning. And yeah, let's dive into the third one. So this is going to be an interactive one, as I quickly showed in the beginning. This is kind of like based on the panel. Yeah. Nothing too fancy, but it's fun. We start with a point generator, pop. And we're going to select a rectangle here. I'm going to do 1.77 by 1 because I know that's 16 by 9 aspect ratio. And then I want this to be bigger. So I'm going to add a transform, uniform scale 2. And then we want to work with particles. So we add a particle pop and a keyboard in, because particles are basically a feedback loop in pops. So we want to be able to reset that nicely with keyboard. Then I'm going to add a null. Same with feedback. We need an endpoint. So I'm going to call this p-end and drag it back onto here. Target particles update pop. And then I want to add a field and a transform for now. And then we can put that into here. So right now you can see there's some points scattered. So again, I've got like a line material. I have points only turned on, lines off, and then very small size and pretty low alpha as well. And then first off, I want to go to our particles and increase the amount a lot. So I want to have 100,000 here. No, 10,000 actually is fine. Whoops. And a birth rate of 9,000. Life expectancy of 1, life variance 1, and random seed can be anything. I'm going to go for 24. It doesn't really matter. So we've got particles now. So let's see if I go to the transform and scale this down. You're going to see this kind of effect. They're going to like move all together. So this kind of effect, similarly, I want to be only at a certain part of the screen. So again, I could technically use a lookup texture, but we also have this field pop. And here we can actually define a sphere or any kind of shape that we can select from here, which will then manipulate only that part. So let me show you that. So basically we go to output, and by default it's turned on weight. I'm going to go down with the radius, maybe to 0.5. So if I now select weight here and go down with the uniform scale, for example, you can see it only like, yeah, if I keep it that way, it only affects the sphere here. So if I were to make this bigger, it only affects that part. Or if I were to maybe do capsule here, or I don't know, tube capped, I don't know. You can mess around with those. We just want to go with this one. And actually, I don't want to use weight, so I'm going to just delete that. And instead, I want to use the sign distance function. It works a bit differently, but it's really fun. So I'm going to select dist now. Now you can see what that does. And now on my transform of the field, I can tell it where to manipulate it, basically. So I'm going to leave it at 0, 0, 0. And before we actually control that with the mouse, I want to just add some noise. By default, always way too strong because we're in a loop, right? So first off, I might want to animate this. ABS time.seconds times 0.2 or something. Maybe even like 0.1. It's very slow animation. And then an amplitude of 0.005. There we go. And I also want this to be smaller periods, so 0.5. There we go. It already looks a bit nicer. And then I want to add a trail afterwards. And trail length is fine. I'm going to do match by attribute part ID. I can just put like 10,000 here. Nice. So that already looks pretty cool. Like a kind of like a sun, I guess. And now we can manipulate where the field goes. So usually, I mean, we could use the mouse in, but I want to use the panel. So for that to work, my component here is actually on the perform window. So if I go into perform mode, so I've also got borders turned off and that kind of stuff. So basically, if I go into perform mode, we can now see this and actually interact with it. So now I can use roll U and roll V here. And I want to manipulate them in the same way. So I don't have to do any selection. I can just add a math because they just go from 0 to 1. So I want them to go from -1 to 1. Let's add a null here. And then on my field transform, I now want to use roll V on my translate X, roll U on translate X, and roll V translate Y. So now if I go into perform mode, you can see we're actually changing that field. They're still going into the center, but that's because we're actually changing the uniform scale here. So we could, for example, I don't know, we could also do rotation. So maybe just very slightly, like rotation of 1. So now the rotation is going to be more like, oh, that's great, still kind of centered, I guess. You could, for example, we could also turn that off. We can also go to map element and just use dist. Put that on the amplitude. Let's do multiply. And basically now wherever our field is, the amplitude of the noise is going to be affected by that. So this is also a very interesting use of the field. So actually I really love that we have this map thing here. So here you can use attributes to directly influence certain parameters. It can't be all parameters. You can see of the noise here, it's like 5 parameters you can choose from. And I feel amplitude works the best. But it's quite interesting that you can do that. And I can highly recommend like messing around with that. Okay, but I'm gonna go back a bit and just do what we did in the beginning. And then again, we might want to add some texture here, like some color. So I'm gonna do lookup texture. And in this case, I actually want to just use distance, like dist. Again, we want to create some tops. So I'm going to create a ramp and then a null. Call this color again. Put that on here. And let's output the color here. So you can already see that works. So I'm going to change my period to 2. And I'm going to add like I'm going to put my black here. Let's also do ease in, ease out. And I'm going to put like a nice greenish color here. And like a reddish color there. And I also want to change the extend mode here to hold. Let's get rid of that white. Yeah. I mean, you're free to change this to whatever you like. So maybe I want to actually face it. Something like that. I think that looks pretty nice. You could obviously use the field, whatever output you have here, to manipulate several parameters or whatever. But yeah, this looks pretty funky, actually. Funkier than before. Cool, yeah. So again, field, super nice pop, which allows us to do object-based or part-based manipulation of attributes, pretty much, or parameters. Right, last but not least, a very experimental one. As you can see, we've created a little fractal tree, and we're going to do that from scratch now. So again, I've got a render setup here. I actually got line with a very low alpha, like 0.02, and also points also with pretty low alpha and far color on the far thing. Yeah, but we can briefly check that out later. So I'm going to start with a box actually, and change the size to 0.05, 0.05. And now we got a stick. We've created a stick in TouchDesigner. Now my idea was, and it actually works, which is very surprising to me, that we can kind of create fractals with feedback. So first we want to create a little feedback loop. And one very important thing is, and I'm very glad that we have this, is this memory limit. So turn that on immediately, because we're going to do a feedback where we copy one thing over and over and over again. So we want to tell it to stop after a certain amount of copying. So I'm just going to do 2000 for now. We can look at that later. But if you don't do that, you're going to crash TouchDesigner for sure. So make sure you've selected this. I'm going to add a keyboard in, again, just to be able to like restart this. And again, we need an endpoint. So I'm going to call this FB end, like a null, and drag that back onto the feedback. And let's connect that to the geo. So you can already see my little box there appearing, very transparent because of my line settings. What I want to do now is add a copy, actually in here. And I just want to do 2 copies for now. Start with 2 copies. And then I've got these values, which you just have to kind of live with for now, but then you can maybe change them. So first, let's rotate it around like 80. And by the way, I've also got on my geo, I've also got the epstein.frame times 0.12, just to make it rotate. And then on my copy, yeah, I've got 80 here. I'm gonna do 15 here. Let's also move it up by 1. So if I press 1 again, you can already see that kind of works. And I'm gonna do minus 0.15. So these are just values that I found that work well. These are not values that you have to use. And then I'm going to do another copy. And on this copy again, I'm going to do 2 copies. And I'm going to change the rotation here to 10 and the rotation here to 180. And this is where the magic happens. If I press 1 again on my keyboard, you can now see we've created a fractal. So yeah, these are just things I've messed around with. So you can, like, if you see, like, if you change parameters here, it might look really crazy, right? But you can create really interesting things like this, right? But yeah, let's go back to something that looks nice. Why does it not look nice anymore? Damn it! Why did it not go back? There we go. And we could also maybe go down with this slightly, so 0.8. And then we could, for example, go to our feedback and change it. Maybe we can go lower. It's just 1,000. We could go up to like 5,000. We could change this to a number of copies 4, and that really creates a tree looking shape, which I really love. Something like that. Might want to, I don't know, mess around with the Z. But this is, yeah, such a fun way to create a tree. Yeah, to make it look even nicer, we can add a sprinkle afterwards to kind of more evenly distribute points on it. So might want to go really high with the points. We can even add, and I've shown this in the last video, proximity. And maybe go a bit higher with this, something like that. Maybe just 2 points. So we have a bit of connection between the branches. And then I can also add a noise to make it look a bit more organic, maybe like this. So you can go crazy with this, but if you do it subtly, I think it can work nicely. You can also animate it, of course. And again, we can change it to whatever we like. It's really cute. Like if you press 1 and you see this little tree grow. I don't know how far you can go with like the memory here. I guess it also depends on your machine. But yeah, I think you can create some really interesting fractals. I love the idea of using feedback in 3D, and I think I've just scratched the surface slightly. And if you find something lovely here, or if you dig deeper into this, please let me know and share. I'd love to see that. And yeah, that is basically it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for everybody for the support through all the last years. I really feel quite healthy again, and it's more stable than it has been in the last years, so I'm very optimistic right now. So I think there shall be more videos coming, and I'm so excited about pops as well. Again, I've just scratched the surface here, so I think there's a lot more to explore, to understand, like maybe some shader logic, some more attribute stuff. There's so much more to do. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.